Morgan Thomas Show. Brought to you by Black's Tire Inc.
Here we go. You are watching and listening to the Morgan Thomas Show. I'm your host and producer, Morgan Thomas, and joining me live again this week is Big Al, Alan Adams. Welcome to the show, Al.
Man, I have to tell you, you just assume it's Monday. It's really hard to keep track anymore. It really is. But hey, we're here doing the show. We're here for you people in quarantine, or those of you that aren't in quarantine and just want to be a part of the show. So it's a good time to talk Tigers as always.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the Clemson Tigers, specifically the Clemson Tigers football team and those teams that they will be facing this upcoming season. Yes, we do believe on Dabo Swinney's side that there will be an upcoming season. Got to stay positive right now in this crazy time that we're going through. But again, thank you so much for joining us. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, wherever you're watching or listening over on our podcast. We appreciate you supporting the show every week or every other week right now, since, we're kind of trying to space things out. Hope you understand that. But Alan and I are at our homes. As you can see, we're quarantined with you. As you know, the governor of South Carolina just came out recently with kind of stay home or only go out if you have essential things to do. So I think that starts tomorrow, or Tuesday. So make sure you abide by that, because we want this thing to get over with so we can get back to college football, sports in general, really. But thank you again for watching the show. And Al, so are you still going to be able to go to work, man?
Of course. You know, the DOT, we're essential business, baby. We got roads to build. People should be happy about that. Shutdown orders are not affecting us right now whatsoever, except for a little bit of telecommuting here now and again. So we do get to work from home a little bit. I'm going into the office tomorrow, so it should be good times as always at the SCDOT. Making dreams come true.
Is it safe to say?
Don't laugh.
Is it safe to say that the rain could stop the DOT, but not the coronavirus?
That's right. That is a very fair statement. The rain, man. The rain is bad for construction, and it's bad because, man, it seems like these past couple of years we get nothing but rain. We've actually had a nice little stretch of it here, without rain, so that's been kind of cool. But I think it's gonna come back here in a week or so, so that's kind of unfortunate. But rain is the enemy of progress as far as roads are concerned.
Yeah, and we're trying to figure out things to do during this quarantine. I've been watching wrestling. I'm a big wrestling fan, WWE, AEW, whatever. I watch it, and I watched WrestleMania. They had live two-night, well, I don't know if it was really live. Most of it was, I believe, pre-recorded matches from earlier on in the month that they knew this. They kind of figured all these things were going to happen. And so, but it was good. I enjoyed WrestleMania. I know, Al, you probably didn't watch any of it, so I can't really talk to you about it. But if you're out there and you want to call in and talk about wrestling, we got a lot to talk about. But if you want to talk about wrestling with me, I'd be more than happy to. 864-772-6674. Make sure you check us out over on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, wherever you watch us. But on the call-in line as well is sponsored by Charleston Sports Pub. They are a restaurant in downtown Greenville, downtown Clemson, so make sure you support them. I believe you can still get pickup service from them, so go, stop by and support a local business. Guy who grew up in Anderson owns and operates the business, so make sure you go support him. Before we get started, though, I want to let you know about another locally owned, family-owned business, and that is Black's Tire Inc., family-owned and operated since 1971. If you need new tires, brakes, alignments, tire repair, or just looking for a friendly professional to help answer your questions, check out Black's Tire Inc., located 1415 East Main Street, Westminster, South Carolina. Give them a call, 864-647-9292. You might have to get your car repaired or might have to get your tire changed or something, while you're going to work or working home. And again, they've family owned and operated, been around for a long time, so we want to support them just like they support us as well. Al, what you got over on Facebook? Any action there? I got about 8 people over on YouTube. I know we're kind of competing tonight with the Clemson UNC game on the ACC network, which I was like, ooh, that one's going to be a tough one because, that's one for the history books.
Yeah, it sure is. But, hey, look, we're competing. That's what you do. Competitors go out and they compete. We got about 20 over here. I think it looks like 18 over here right now on Facebook. A lot of the regulars watching in, and I do want to say before we get going too far into this that it is my Aunt Jen's birthday today. She turns 25 or something today, so I did want to wish her a very happy birthday. I love you very much, and I hope that it was a good one, all things considered.
Nice. Happy birthday there. And yeah, like I said, we got people over watching on YouTube as well. Carson's talking about he's missing football a lot, and we are too. And we wanted to kind of get into some more previewing of Clemson football. And that is why tonight we're going to talk about the Atlantic Coast Conference, and specifically the Atlantic Division of the Atlantic Coast Conference. And that's the division that Clemson is on. So you've got Clemson, you got Louisville, you got Wake Forest, Florida State, Boston College, Syracuse, and NC State. Don't really like to talk about them, but we'll talk about them. So Al, when I told you we're going to do a deep dive into the Atlantic Division, I thought we'd do the Atlantic Division so it wouldn't be too many teams all at once. So now that you've done your research, what's your thoughts so far? Before we get started into anything, what was your thoughts on doing the research on the Atlantic Division?
So I take it from that question, you're really wanting me to hammer you live on the air, okay? Because you know my thoughts on this research. This is insane. It really is the amount of research to put in a good full show and actually sound like you know what you're talking about. The amount of research is incredible. It really is. And I don't know exactly what your notes are and what kind of stuff you wrote down. So it's going to be really cool when we dive into this and see exactly what you got. Because I wrote down a few nuggets here and there, and it's hard to find some of these stats. It's hard to find, good information out there. It really is. There's a lot of information that you'll read on one side and you'll take it as the gospel. You'll write it down. And you'll go to another one, and it's like, that's not what they said. And it's simple stuff. It's like what year somebody is. It's kind of crazy. The discrepancy among sites and where the information is coming from. So it involves a lot of cross-referencing, and I mean, even then you can still get it wrong. So who knows? But I'm excited to dive into the Atlantic Division, and heck, it's going to be even crazier when we go to the Coastal, because we had a layup in Clemson here. I didn't do any research on Clemson. We're just going to kind of talk about that off the top of our heads, and we should know that well enough to not worry about.
Yeah, I'm sharing it over on Facebook. If you're on Facebook as well, help us out and share the show or start a watch party and let other Clemson Tiger fans know that might have nothing to watch, maybe don't have the ACC network, who knows, but maybe don't want to watch basketball and want to rather watch us and talk about college football and specifically ACC and Clemson football. Let them know, give them a shout. Make sure you like the video and share the video and subscribe or follow if you haven't already. We appreciate it. But again, we're going to be talking about the ACC. And like you said, I really didn't look at Clemson now. So right. because Clemson, we know, they dominated the ACC, they dominated the Atlantic Coast Conference or the Atlantic Division. I say Atlantic Coast Conference. I'm trying to say Atlantic Division. They held the best record, 14-1 overall, but 8-0 in the ACC. And then behind them was Louisville and Wake Forest. Louisville actually had a pretty decent record in the ACC, 5-3, overall 8-5, a big turnaround from the previous season. And then Wake Forest had a good year as well. Both teams had a great game against each other. And I want us kind of to start out with them, kind of start from the best teams of last year and kind of work our way down to the worst teams of last year, all right, if you don't mind getting started that way. Sure. But the only team that was really beat any other ranked team was Louisville. So if you look at it, which this is horrible to say, and I know people are like, well, we know the ACC is horrible. And yeah, we know. But let's talk about it. Statistically, I've got down Clemson beat 3 ranked teams in the AP or the USA Today poll. Louisville beat 1 and no one else. And the funny thing is, Louisville actually beat Wake Forest when they were ranked. So it's kind of like, I feel like it's just kind of cheating, But really, if you look at it, I mean, technically, I would say probably Clemson, the only team to even beat any teams that were worth even talking about. But Louisville, again, had a good turnaround year. The problem that they really had was that they could score a lot. They could put up a lot of yards, but they also gave up a lot of points and a lot of yards as well. I'm looking here, 430 points for, 434 points against. Now, if your points against are more than your points for, that's not a good thing. Because on the other end, look at Clemson. 659 points for and 203 points against. So, I mean, domination is, and that's overall. So that's not just the ACC. We go to just the ACC, and it's still just as lopsided. Right. But Louisville did good at home. Had a 2-3 record away. But we wanted to not only look at kind of their records and their stats, but also look at what we think they're going to do next year and kind of preview them a little bit. One thing that I've told you plenty of times last year, is it all starts and ends with the quarterback position. And they bring back Mikael Cunningham, who is a pretty good threat as far as running and passing the ball. He's nowhere near anything that Clemson would be used to having, but that's because I believe Clemson is, spoiled in their quarterback world for sure right now. But they do have reigning ACC Coach of the Year, Scott Satterfield. So I think, especially when spring training or spring camp has been cut short, the fact that there's not a lot of coaching turnover, and the fact that they have the reigning ACC Coach of the Year is good for Louisville.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I kind of echo a lot of the sentiments that you have. Last season they were 7-5, and then they went 8-5 when they beat Mississippi State in Music City Bowl. Scott Satterfield, I really think, is that coach that's going to kind of get them back to where they were a few years back with Lamar Jackson. I think he's a really good coach. I mean, goodness gracious, they went from 2-10 last year to 8-5, I think it was. That's a huge jump. And they kind of, they delve into the transfer market a good bit to kind of plug some of those holes. I'm assuming the transfers and the JUCOs and that kind of thing. I'm assuming they'll continue to do that. But like you said, Mikael Cunningham is coming back at their quarterback position, dual threat guy. Last year, I got some stats here. He was 111 for 178 with over 2,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. That's a pretty good ratio there. He also added 122 rushes for 482 yards and 6 touchdowns. So he's definitely got the dual threat capability. And then they've got decent playmakers. On the outside, they have Tutu Atwell. He's their leading returning receiver. You may hear, I don't know if you'll hear him later on today, when we talk about some of our top players list or not. He's got incredible speed. He's 5'9", 153 pounds. He ought to have incredible speed, right? He's one of those short area, quick twitch kind of guys. And he had almost 70 receptions for 1,272 yards, 12 touchdowns last year. So, the cover's not bare there. I think the kind of thing will be, can they improve their defense? They were ranked 102nd in overall defense, as you were kind of showing some of their numbers. Is not good. 102nd in defense, 79 in passing yards allowed, and 112th in rushing yards allowed. Gave up over 200 yards a game rushing. So it's just not going to get it done. It's not going to get done in any conference, not even the ACC. And again, they did better in the ACC, obviously, but it's just they've got to improve on that number if they really want to take the next step. And it's going to kind of be interesting to see if, Mikael Cunningham can be protected. They lost one of their best players, and Mekhi Becton, I believe, is the offensive tackle that went pro, declared early. So I'm not sure who's all returning for them on their offensive line. I try to do a little research there because you know how I am about the offensive line, but it's just hard to find. I think all those positions are going to be up for grabs. The new coaches and things like that. I think they're just going to kind of say, hey, let's see what you got. And I'm sure that's going to happen at several schools that, got some different coaches. There were several teams in the ACC that you'll kind of find out today that kind of added some new coaches. So they also have Javian Hawkins returning at running back. He had a decent season last year. He had over 1,500 yards, 9 touchdowns. In one game against Syracuse, he had 23 rushes for 233 yards. Now, that's a heck of a game. Okay, so a lot of people want to talk about how he came on at the end of last year. I looked at his stats. I thought he did pretty solid overall, to be honest with you. And they kick off the season in ACC play. They're on the road at NC State on a Thursday night, so that's kind of a heck of a way to start the season. It's going to be that's a big game. Of course, any conference game is a big game. We know that, but on a Thursday night, away, that's kind of a big deal. Kind of, really get you ahead in the ACC Atlantic and get you behind in a hurry. So they're out of conference games. I noticed they're Murray State, Western Kentucky, Notre Dame, and Kentucky, of course, at the end of the year, their rivalry game. So they have a decent out of conference schedule. Notre Dame's technically out of conference, so we are going to consider them OOC game. But it's going to be interesting to see what Louisville does. I think they're definitely the second team in the ACC Atlantic. I don't really think there's anybody else, past Clemson. But if there was anybody that could make some noise, I think Louisville's that team.
I like that you said that they're the second team because that's what I put down as well. I could see this team winning 8 games again because of what they're returning. And they also didn't do too bad in the recruiting efforts. They got another linebacker, an offensive lineman, and a wide receiver to kind of fill in some gaps. They're really kind of losing, though, up front. They lost Gigi Robinson to graduation, who was one of their best pass rushers. And as you mentioned before, Minky Becton and Taylor Haycraft, both their tackles. So both their starting tackles are gone, which is always a concern because you at least, like Clemson, at least they return one, and the backup goes over to the right side, who is a great backup. So Clemson kind of shored up their tackles very quickly. And based off last year, I think we'll do fine. But Louisville, not so much. We don't really know what they're going to get on the offensive line, especially the edge of the offensive line. You go up against a team who has amazing defensive linemen like Clemson will have, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. And Louisville, that's one thing that they gave Clemson a good fight at the beginning, but they couldn't hold on. Yeah. And, I also looked, too, I thought this was interesting as I kept looking into this team. I think that they'll be, like going back to the offensive line, I think they'll be good unless, if you start seeing at the beginning of the season a bunch of sacks. If you start seeing a bunch of sacks at the beginning of the season, this team could be only a 5-win team. So to me, you got to protect that quarterback in Cunningham. He's got an extra year underneath him, and I think he is poised to do well. And again, like you said, they have Atwell. They have both their really good running backs, which is Javian Hawkins and Hassan Hall, who's really a running back and a kind of a kickoff punt returner type guy. Another thing I put in here was away games before November. So September, October away games. On average, you're going to get 3 away games. Okay, now most teams are going to play 5 total away games because there's going to be about 2, cupcake schools, usually what we see. And some of the worst schedules, you're going to get 6 away games. And even worse case scenarios, if you get a ton of away games, like say in November only. And we do have a team, I believe, we'll kind of go down the list, but a team that has a ton of almost only one home game in November. And so we'll talk about that later. But Louisville has got Clemson, Syracuse, and BC as away games before November. And we'll have to talk about Syracuse and BC as we continue. I think that they can at least split Syracuse, BC. I think they can beat a Syracuse team. I don't think they can beat Clemson this year. But I do believe that their schedule is pretty good in the sense that they can probably win 8 more games, back to back and have a good showing. So that's my thought on Louisville. I do believe, as Alan said, it more than likely could be Clemson 1, Louisville 2 when everything shakes out at the end of the season, as far as the Atlantic Division.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that for sure. And some of those games you're talking about at the end of the year, that kind of matters where these games fall in the end of the year. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say they can't beat Clemson. Okay, last year I thought North Carolina had no chance, and we saw how that one went. Okay, so Pittsburgh, we thought 3 years ago or whatever it was, they didn't have a chance, and see what happened at the Valley. Before we went on to win the national championship. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. You can be beaten on any given night. People want to talk about Coach Sweeney, how it's all lip service, how it's all coach speak when he talks about taking it one game at a time. I think he's being true when he says those words because he understands that this kind of thing can happen, and it seems to happen every year. Not necessarily, we don't always get that loss, but there's always that team that plays us close, and of course sometimes we do end up with a loss like Pittsburgh.
Yeah, let's not talk about any losses, Al. Let's just leave that for another day.
Hopefully there won't be any this year.
Before we get into the second team, which is Wake Forest, I wanted to kind of show our fans, which I posted on social media today on our Instagram. I don't normally do Instagram. I'm trying to get back into Instagram now that I'm stuck at home. But I posted on our Instagram a picture of this, and I posted on our Facebook page a picture of this. So if you're a YouTuber and you haven't seen this, I'm going to show it to you right now. This is a beautiful, beautiful cold cast resin replica of the Clemson University graduation ring, or the alumni ring there. one that I'm wearing, one that Alan is wearing. This is actually a reproduction of mine. It's about 3.5 pounds, so it's pretty sturdy there. And you can hang it on your wall, or you can put it on your bookshelf. But they are partners with us as Creative Reflections, are partners with us, and sent us one of these things to kind of show off to the crowd. Made in the United States. And you can go on our Facebook page or check out the description, the link in the description on our YouTube channel, or any of our YouTube videos, really. And check it out and see what you think. Perfect gift for anyone who is a Clemson alumni, whether it be yourself or a friend, and something that they can enjoy. I mean, when I got it, I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. Just how close it looks to the real thing. And it is approved by the Alumni Association. And so a portion of the proceeds go back to our alma mater. So what do you think about that, Al?
Yeah, that's a great deal. And what I want to encourage people to do, besides buy them, that would be a great thing. When you're buying these, when you go to that link and you go to check out Morgan's post on it, okay, make sure you don't tell them the Morgan Thomas Show sent you. Tell them Big Al from the Morgan Thomas Show sent you, because maybe then I can get one myself. Okay, I think if you saw it last time, you saw and heard how bitter I was that I have not received one of these yet.
Kind of hit the mic.
Morgan knows that I'm bitter about it, and he hasn't done anything about it yet. So some show host we have here, but maybe once upon a time, one day soon that I'll get my very own. But yeah, definitely check them out. It's a real cool deal. It is. It's really substantial. I wish we could show the weight. Maybe if Morgan could do some curls with it, and we could kind of show you how substantial it is. It's pretty heavy, guys. It's made of high quality stuff. So check them out. See if it's a good gift for family, friends, or anybody.
And you can see it's a pretty good size. I believe I'm looking at it, 9 5/8 inches wide by 11 1/4 inch tall. So you can check that out. About 2 1/2 inches deep there. I guess you'd say deep. I don't know. Thick, maybe? I don't know. Alan, I believe you're disappearing on me there. You kind of froze up. Right. Yeah, are you back, Al?
I'm back. I hear you loud and clear.
All right. You kind of disappeared on me. I don't know if my internet can. The thing about the internet, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I mean, they're like, everybody's at home on the internet, so my internet connection is getting slower. My Verizon internet connection is getting slower. It's pretty crazy, but it is a unique piece of artwork, and it's the Clemson ring plaque, and you can get it in gold or in the white gold too. So go check it out. Go check out the link on our description or on our Facebook page or on our Instagram page. So we appreciate you for supporting us, and we appreciate Creative Reflections for letting us check one of those out. And I did send an email. I promise. I haven't shown. I didn't CC you, but I did send an email saying Alan needs one. But yeah. All right. So let's go.
It didn't happen.
Let's go back to our second team, which is Wake Forest.
Yep.
And Wake Forest, the big headline around Wake Forest is they lose Jamie Newman, which is their stud quarterback. He goes to Georgia. Ugh, just a terrible thing there. He didn't want to finish out his career at Wake Forest. He decided to move on to Georgia, which, hey, that's up to him. But they have Sam Hartman, who is a guy they really do trust, and who's a guy who played a lot as a true freshman and played a little bit while Newman was hurt, and I believe he played a little bit during Clemson as well. But he's somebody who does have experience, and he's somebody who has somebody to throw to. Just like Cunningham for Louisville has Atwell to throw to, so does Hartman, having Sage Surratt, who is not just anybody to throw to. Probably, I believe, one of the best wide receivers in the ACC by far, before having season-ending shoulder injury. So he will be back. But they do lose their top running back, their running back guy. So if you lose Newman and you lose Cade Kearney, their running back, I think that's like 70% of their production or something like that. It was something crazy. Now, they were 7-1 before Surratt was hurt. So they were definitely a team that was on the rise. They were a team that was ranked in the ACC, and it was kind of one of those things, at least as a Clemson fan, you're probably like, well, we have a ranked team in the ACC. It just happens to be Wake Forest. Yeah. So it wasn't a team you wanted to brag on necessarily, but if Surratt stays healthy, I think they can be just as dominant on at least in the passing game. It would be yet to see what the running game is like, or the rushing attack. They do lose Kendall Hinton, who was a second-team All-ACC wide receiver, And they do lose one of their great tight ends, Jake Fudenthal. Yeah, I'm going to say it right. Jake Fudenthal, who was honorable mention all ACC guy, tight end as well. So the offense really is kind of moving around other than those names that we talked about. The offensive line seems to be relatively intact, so which is always a good thing. So I like their quarterback. I like their offensive line. Their defensive front, they've got about 7 guys up front that have a ton of experience, but they're losing both their starting cornerbacks from what I found out. And their first team all ACC defensive end Carlos Basham Jr. is gone. So
is he gone?
That's pretty tough. Well, I have him down as gone, but I
thought he was coming back.
I think he's coming back. I wrote later that he's coming back. So we'll say he's coming back. So that's a good thing. I mean, he's a dominant defensive end that's going to be back. They do have 4 road games before November, including Notre Dame, Appalachian State,
yeah,
and Chase Bryce and the Fighting. I don't know. We got to change their name, the Demon Deacons. So maybe the Demon Bryces. No, I like Chase Bryce too much to be the Demon Bryces. Maybe the
Demon Bryces. It would be the Blue Bryces.
The Blue Bryces. Okay, okay. I like that. Way better than my first top of the head idea. Let's go with that. You know what? Actually, Al, I have a better idea. Why don't we go with the Blue Bryces?
Sure, perfect.
Okay.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
But I'll tell you, my thoughts on this team is that they won't be the 3rd best team in the ACC at the end of this year.
And that's fair. I mean, look, when you lose a guy like Jamie Newman, that's kind of tough, and it caught everybody off guard. I think I don't know that anybody expected him to leave, especially not for Georgia. Goodness gracious, that just gives me a reason to pull against him this year. Anything that helps the Dogs, I'm against. That's for sure. But look, he had a good freshman campaign, like you said. He broke his leg. That's why he was out, and maybe I think that may have affected him going into the next year, and may have been not, obviously the fact that he's competing with Jamie Newman, who's a great quarterback, is the fact that maybe he wasn't back fully from his leg. Maybe he didn't trust his leg well enough. So I'm expecting good things from Hartman this year. I've seen him play a little bit, a couple years ago, and I thought he did a good job. I think that's going to be a big deal. We talk about quarterback being the most important position, and if you believe in the quarterback, which I do, and the offensive line to protect it, I mean, it's hard to believe they can't, at least keep up on the offensive side when they got Surratt back. I know they lost Hinton and Washington and the tight end as well. So that's going to be tough, but they're still going to be good at receiving. Somebody's going to step up and kind of replace that production at least a little bit, especially when you have a target like Surratt. That's going to attract a lot of attention for sure. And they had their top defensive end back, like you said, Carlos Basham Jr. So that's going to be an incredible deal. He had 18 tackles for loss, 11 sacks, and 13 quarterback hurries last year. So that's a heck of a defensive end, and to bring him back for, I think it's his redshirt senior year actually. So that's going to be big time. Even though they lose their starting corners, maybe their new corners won't have to cover as long because they got this guy back. So that's going to kind of be a big deal. I think their best returning running back, though, that's the problem you talked about, losing their running back. Their best returning running back, I think, is Kenneth Walker. And he had less than 600 yards last season. That's going to be rough. So somebody's going to have to step up in the running game. Hartman's going to run a little bit, but somebody's going to have to step up and kind of carry the load there at running back, because you can't just throw it to Sage Surratt every time. The defense is going to scheme against that for sure. And you were talking about their out-of-conference games. App State's never a cupcake. That's kind of tough. I really wanted to put Wake Forest up at the top of the ACC Atlantic. I didn't. They're kind of somewhere in the middle there. I won't reveal that too much, obviously, until we get there. But and one of the main reasons I didn't have them at the bottom is because I like the quarterback, I like the offensive line for the most part. So I think they deserve to be up there a little bit higher than maybe some people might think.
There's no way Wake Forest finishes at the bottom of the ACC. I know I have a team in mind that also may have a coach in the hot seat that's going to be at the bottom of the ACC based on what I'm seeing, at least preseason. And then it makes it even worse, as we said earlier on in the show, that these guys have a very short off season. They probably may not get. I mean, they didn't get much of a spring season or spring practice, and they also who knows what's going to happen with fall camp. Now we assume fall camp will start in August, but you never know with the situation as it is right now, unfortunately. But again, Wake Forest, Louisville, that's who we've talked about so far. Let us know in the comments what you think over on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, wherever you're watching. I'm checking in right now. I see some chat, but no questions for us. Hey, ask some questions for us because we did a lot of research on these ACC teams, and we hope you enjoy talking about some football when there is none to really talk about other than speculating about what's going to happen this 2020 season, and that's what's been exciting to kind of see. Not so much exciting or that will Clemson or not be in the top. We believe Clemson will be in the top, so that's kind of why we're looking at everybody else to see where they will kind of shake out. But Al, we got a couple people are over on YouTube, and Randy actually saying the audio is low. Let me see if I can I'll just tweak the audio a little bit, Randy. I'll move us both up, and hopefully that didn't blow everybody else out of the water there. But I'll move the audio up for you, Randy, so thank you so much. Al, what you got over there? You got any questions or anything?
I had a question earlier. Adam Holland, our good buddy, got in, wanted to know about who the trap game was this season. Of course, I told him Louisville. I think that's who I think the trap game is. I mean, it's a team that can compete. It's a team that's got some players, and it's I'm pretty sure that's early in the season game. I mean, it's just something that you can just kind of fall into a trap there. I mean, fall into a trap. It's a trap game, right? That's kind of the point. But anyways, I mean, you never know who it's going to be. I had no illusions that it was going to be North Carolina last year, none whatsoever. So a team always seems to kind of jump up out of nowhere. But if I had to guess one right now, my money would be on Louisville.
Quote of the night, Al. The trap game will be like falling into a trap.
That's right. That's right. Hey, you can't say it's wrong. I mean.
But before we get into segment number 2, or our next 2 teams of the 6 teams that we're going to cover, let's talk about our second segment sponsor, which is Tiger Sports Shop. They are still open, I believe, as last I heard. I'm not 100% sure now after everything that's going on, but you can order online, I'm assuming. I don't even know. Really, to be honest with you, I don't know. But what I will say is that they're family-owned and operated. They've been around for a long time. They've supported this show, and we appreciate their support. And we want to continue to support them and let you know about them, tigersports.com, or one of their locations. I know last time I heard they were still allowing curbside pickup, but, as the stuff comes out and as the stay-at-home order comes out, I don't believe you'll be able to go get, clothes right now. I'm not 100% sure if that's essential or not. Hopefully, Al, you have enough clothes in the closet there for you. But we don't only dress for success, we TS for success. That's Tiger Sports for success. I am wearing a Nike Clemson purple white stripe polo that is one of my favorites, and I wear it very, very often. Al, what you got?
I'm actually wearing a Cutter and Buck Dry Tech polo. It's got a real cool kind of vintage Tiger logo on it. I don't know if you can see it. It's pretty neat. I like the other logos. I love the paw. Of course, the paw is a classic. The paw is my favorite. But then they have some old school ones that they kind of bring out from time to time. They're really, really awesome. So it's kind of got it's got faded, real subtle stripes to it. So it's really nice. This is one of my favorites. Like I said, it's a little more substantial kind of golf polo. It's not one of the real stretchy ones. It's got a little bit of give, just enough give, we'll say. But yeah, check out Tiger Sports Shop. They got all the best stuff. Look online if you can't get there because of quarantine right now. Check it out online. Be ready to flood them when this thing is over because they got the best stuff out there. Everybody that knows Clemson gear knows that Tiger Sports Shop is the place to be. So we appreciate Sean and Julie hooking us up here, and we hope that they're doing well during these times. And we want to let you know to give them a shout or a look just as soon as you can.
I'm looking at some posts online just to see if they have anything indicates about their store. But like Alan said, you can order online, tigersports.com. So go check it out there. But again, thank you so much, Julie and Sean, for supporting the show. I'm looking to see over on our social media feeds if we got anything. Let me scroll down a little bit. Randy says that he's been checking them out. They're online only right now. So good call out there, Randy. Hopefully the audio is better for you. I know you said it was a little bit low. I tweaked it up a little bit, so let me know what you think there on your end. But Al, we'll get into our second segment and our next 2 teams, which the first one on the list, if you look down, we talked about Clemson. Well, we hadn't talked about Clemson, but we skipped over Clemson. We talked about Louisville. We talked about Wake Forest. Next team up is Florida State, who went 4-4 in the ACC, 6-7 overall. not too bad points for, points against, 363 points for, 362 points against. So, great job there. Bad part about them is they're a great home team, a horrible, one of the worst, the second worst road team in the ACC, or in the Atlantic Division. 5-2 at home, 1-4 on the road. Lost their last 2 games. Did not win a ranked game. Went 0-3 against the AP poll there last season. And as we know, lost their coach. Mm-hmm. So what can new coach Mike Norvell do for Florida State? Do you feel like this is the year of the Seminole?
I wouldn't say it's the year of the Seminole by any means, but I think, they got to get it turned around. Goodness gracious, this is Florida State. I cannot believe Florida State has been down as long as they have been down. This is just nuts to me. I cannot imagine it with a talent-rich state like Florida and a school with the history and tradition of Florida State that they've been down this long. So I'm guessing Mike Norvell maybe can get them there. We'll see how it goes. Former Memphis coach. It's just, can they find a quarterback this year? Is James Blackman going to be the guy all year? Is somebody else going to kind of come up and take his spot? I don't really know. Blackman is, he's got a decent arm. He's a decent quarterback, but man, he's really thin. He's going to take some punishment. He's going to need to bulk up a little bit. We've been talking about that since he got on campus, if I'm not mistaken. But they've got Akers left. I mean, that's a huge deal. The fact that he's leaving early for the NFL. He was a great running back. That's going to be tough. But running behind that line is pretty brutal. Their offensive line has been bad for a long time, and it's hard to believe. But again, maybe that's why Florida State's been bad this long, is because their offensive line. And then they had another cornerback leave, Stanford Samuels, I believe, left as well. Stanford Samuels is third, is what I have here. So, he was a real long cornerback, so that's kind of a big deal. He's kind of an AJ Terrell type. But they did get some good news. I mean, Marvin Wilson, their big-time defensive tackle, and Tamorion Terry at wide receiver, the big playmaker there, returned for their senior seasons. So that's a big deal. Marvin Wilson, 6'5", 310 pounds. He was first-team All-ACC last year, 8.5 tackles for loss, 5 sacks. That led the team, and that's a defensive tackle. It's not at end where you used to getting these big-time sack numbers. So that's pretty good production there from defensive tackle. Injury caused him to miss the last 4 games as well, so it was kind of a shortened season for him. Tamorion Terry's that's a big receiver, 6'4", 210. Okay, it's a big target there. It's nice for somebody to have a big target. You can just kind of throw the jump ball to if you get in trouble, kind of deal. So it's all going to come down to OL. They got a new OL coach, Alex Atkins, I believe, is their guy. So all the positions, like I think I mentioned this for Wake Forest, they're going to be up for grabs. It's kind of a clean slate, earn your spot kind of deal. So hopefully, I say hopefully if you're a Florida State fan, that they're able to find something on the OL. I'm okay if they don't find anything, because I want them to be buried just as long as we can possibly hold them down there. But they're opening the season Chick-fil-A Kickoff Classic with West Virginia, so that's kind of a cool matchup there to begin with. It's something a lot of people will be watching anytime you kind of go cross conference and play another Power 5 team. It's kind of a neat deal. But I think they've got a pretty rough schedule. Their out of conference games are Samford, which I know Samford's not a big deal, but hey, Samford gave more than they wanted a couple years ago. I think they won that game by 10 and were in pretty close danger to losing that one there near the end. But they also play Boise State. They play Florida, of course, a rivalry game at the end of the year. So it's a pretty tough schedule. So I see it kind of being a rough year. Maybe they make a bowl game 6-6 kind of deal, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, and a lot of people ask us, do we share our notes? Well, we used to when we first started. We used to share our notes, and sometimes we do now. But most of the time, I don't look at Alan's notes. Alan doesn't look at my notes. And I like it that way nowadays, because we kind of do the same research and kind of pick each other's brains and see if we find out the same stuff or if we come to the same conclusion, which, it does seem like we came to the same conclusion there. Again, you lose Cam Akers. Tamorion Terry is returning, but Cam Akers is a huge loss for sure. Offensive line, like you said, listen to this, Al. In 2020, recruiting, 4 offensive line recruits, none of them better than 3-star,
which is unheard of.
Florida State not able to recruit a 4-star offensive lineman in an entire class. That's just head scratching. Now, they did get a graduate transfer from FIU, but really, again, it's nothing to write home about. If you have an offensive line, nothing to write home about, then you're going to struggle in certain closer games. And this is a team that was not very good on the road. And if they're not good on the road again, like you said, this could be another team struggling to get that 6th win. Who knows what they're going to get? They lose Alex Hornibrook as kind of he originally started and lost the job. They couldn't decide what he was going to do. James Blackman comes back. James Blackman, as everybody knows, seems to have some playmaking ability, but is about 100 pounds soaking wet, and it's just not very, not very long lasting, I guess you could say. As much as he gets sacked, within a couple of games, he's out of there. And that's not a good thing for him because he doesn't have that body to kind of withstand. He's not the Taj Boyds of the world that can take a punishment and keep going. But they do get first-team defensive tackle Marvin Wilson back. So that's a big-time returner for sure. Everyone in town, I put, is expecting Adam Fuller from Memphis to quickly fix things. So apparently Adam Fuller, who is the defensive coordinator now, is from Memphis, of course, following Norvell. But everyone expects him to kind of turn it around because he turned Memphis around pretty quick too. So we'll see, what he can do there. I don't know if you saw this, Al, but a couple of months ago, they had like a tackling drill with Florida State when spring practice just started. And it was like every linebacker or every defensive player tried to arm tackle the guy and missed. It was like 3 misses before they actually got a tackle. And the tackle was partly helped because he ran out of bounds. So a lot of people made fun of that over on Twitter. It wasn't a good look for Florida State trying to kind of rebound from their woes for sure. Right. But I could see, the beginning of their schedule, I don't really think that if you're a Florida State fan, I think you're licking your chops there for West Virginia. It's a team that's a named team for sure. It's not some cupcake pushover. You get a good win in an out-of-conference team against an out-of-conference team in the Big 12, and then I wrote down they could go 4-0 before facing Clemson. So it could be an undefeated Florida State team, and then is Clemson going to Florida State or the other way around? I can't remember. I didn't put that in the notes, but I could see it being 2 undefeated teams. Not that it would be like a college game day or anything.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why I feel like we go there this year, but goodness gracious, it's just we're all messed up. The quarantine is killing us here. It's just insanity. I don't even know what to think anymore. I can barely remember what day it is. Somebody will get in on the text line, I'm sure, here soon. And kind of let us know the text line, the comment line, I guess I should say.
All right, Al, you're on the radio now.
It's at FSU. So yeah.
Okay, yeah. So
I was correct. Yes.
At Florida State. I didn't write it down. I didn't want to assume. And another thing is, I think that Louisville is going to play them tough because Louisville had a chance to win the game in their house and blew it in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
I actually picked Louisville. I picked Louisville to cover the spread in that game, and they didn't do it for me last year, so I kind of feel bad about that. I'm kind of still chapped about that, and I know that the Cardinals players are going to be that way too. They go to Papa John. Well, is it Papa John Stadium? I don't even know, but they go to Louisville, and they are going to get revenge. I think so. Clemson's a loss. I believe Louisville will be a loss. It's a team, if they're good on the road, they could win 8 or 9 games. Now I said 9, that's loosely, but
lofty.
If they're good on the road, we already know they can. They did well last year at home, but I could definitely see 8 wins if they're a good road team. But if they're struggling on the road again, which I like to say could be because of the bad offensive line. They're going to struggle to get a bowl game again. But in this time, you don't have to worry about the coach because he just got hired.
Let's see. So who we got next? We got NC State next?
No, I didn't do NC State. I got them last because they finished last in the Atlantic last year.
So you went how they finished last year.
Okay,
gotcha.
I went how they finished. So next up is Boston College. Boston here.
All right.
All right. So Jeff Halfley takes over to try to get BC to the next level. This is a guy from Ohio State, but he was only the co-defensive coordinator for just 1 year, but he did spend 7 years in the NFL as a defensive backs coach. So you got to think right there, he's got to improve the defensive backs there. He's got to improve that defense, right? At least in the sense of a secondary. Now, they're also bringing in Frank Signetti Jr., who has worked with Aaron Rodgers, your man, and Eli Manning. He's now the offensive coordinator. Tim Lukabu, I believe I'm saying that right, is now the defensive coordinator, is a former linebackers coach, all right? And he was linebackers coach for the Bengals. So this guy's bringing in a ton of NFL caliber coaches, in order to try to take this team to the next level. And I remember on Packer and Durham, the president of the university came on, and they asked him, they said, Adazio was kind of well liked in the area. He didn't have losing seasons, so what was the deal? And he said, I'm just tired of having 6 and 7 win years. I'm tired of having going 7 and 6, every single year. I want to see what we can do. I feel like Boston College can take it to the next level. Now, what do you think about Steve Adazio? What do you think about him as a person? It's not here or there. He's gone now. And now they've got Halfley, who will take over. They also lose Anthony Brown, who suffered a season-ending knee injury and then is transferring out. Mm-hmm. So when I talk about what do I care about, number one, quarterback, Dennis Grossel. I'm not liking that. I'm already kind of like feeling a little nervous there. So you got a question there. Then you lose A.J. Dillon. Now, Boston College articles, Boston College people are going to tell us, well, we've got David Bailey. Now, David Bailey, I believe, was an honorable mention all ACC. So, yes, and he is the same exact height and almost the same weight as A.J. Dillon. So, a lot of people are saying, well, don't even worry. We're not even worried about A.J. Dillon. He is a clone of Dillon. Now, the offensive line is always going to be stacked at Boston College. You can't ever worry about that.
Right.
And they only have 2 away games before November. Remember I told you about, I like this stat. So they're September, October, a lot of home games. Though. If there's only 2 away games in September, October, that means this is the team I was telling you about. 3 away games in November, only 1 home game in November. That is not a fun way to finish the year out with only 1 home game in an entire month, and it's the last month of the season. Another thing that I think bodes well for Boston College, at least in some cases, is that they lost 3 ACC games by a total of 14 points. So the games they lost weren't blowouts, other than I believe like the one game where we both picked them last year to beat Kansas, whatever happened there, they got destroyed by Kansas and Les Miles. So they really let us down there. But I don't know. I say that they were really close, but that was a completely different team. They're replacing their quarterback. They're replacing their running back. They're replacing their head coach, offensive coordinator, and defensive coordinator. So those are all things that make me kind of hiccup a little bit.
Yeah, and I got to tell you, thank goodness you went over most everything I had to say over Boston College, so we can kind of end this one pretty quickly because I agree with you. I mean, they lose everything. A.J. Dillon was the heart and soul of this team, and he is gone. He sat out the bowl game, went pro. Okay, it's time for him to kind of do his business in the NFL. And Dennis Grossel is just not one of those guys, or Grossel, however you say his last name, is not one of those guys that's just going to light up the stat sheet, at least, from what we've seen so far, which, again, it's a relatively small sample size, so I don't want to throw him under the bus yet. But his completion percentage is what worries me. It's under 50% in the games he played last year, and that's not going to get the job done at all. They're going to have to find a way to pass the ball for sure. I think they do have they're waiting on a transfer, Phil Jerkovich or something like that from Notre Dame. I believe he'll be the starter if he gets a waiver. I would imagine. I think his talent level is far superior, but will he get that waiver? Who knows? The NCAA is crazy when it comes to these waivers. They're granting it to some guys for no reason, and they're not giving it to others for the most ridiculous of reasons. So we don't even know what to think there. If they get Jerkovich as their quarterback, I think they have potential to be a little bit better than people think. I'm not going to put them as a for sure lock for a bowl game, but I think that would be a pretty good probability. With all the new coaching staff, it's going to be a lot to learn there for sure as they're moving on through this season. So we'll kind of see how they go. They got some players. I mean, they got what is it? Kobe White and Zay Flowers. They're kind of their receivers. Those are go-to guys. Kobe White last year, he had 424 yards, 5 touchdowns. It's a pretty solid receiver for a team that never threw the ball really. And Flowers is a shorter, quick twitch kind of guy. He only started 2 games, but he played all 12, 22 receptions, 341 yards, 3 touchdowns. And he also had 26 rushes for 198 yards. So they've got some playmakers. They also returned key piece of the defense, linebacker Max Richardson. He's a redshirt junior. He led the team in tackles, tackle for loss, and sacks, in 2019. So that's kind of a big piece of the defense. So, they also, by the way, start off in ACC play against, who is it they play? Syracuse Friday night. Okay, so they're going to be doing business on a Friday night. And I believe they're at home. I believe they have that game at home. I'm pretty sure BC does. So they're out of conference games. I have written down Ohio, Kansas, Purdue, and Holy Cross. So nothing really to write home about there. Tough stretch in November or on October, excuse me, that I have written down. Clemson, Louisville, VT. Those are some kind of tough games there. It's going to be real interesting to see what Boston College does. I like their offensive line, but I don't like the quarterback situation going on right now. So I have them down toward the bottom of the conference.
I was hoping you'd say that because we'll talk about it a little bit later on tonight about what our final rankings predictions are. And we're also going to give you our top players that aren't wearing Clemson uniform or aren't wearing a Clemson uniform for the ACC Atlantic Division. I got a little bit of a dry cough there. Got to be careful. But we got some chatter over on YouTube. Let me kind of read through it here. So John jumps in and says, Noles need to be good enough that the broadcast game matter for audience. Not many ACC games have the same potential. I agree. I mean, Florida State has that potential to draw a big crowd. Oh, yeah. And to see them packing their stadium half full is really, it's just not good. I mean, I don't hate Florida State that much to where I don't want any of their fans to show up. I will tell anybody I like college football enough to want competitive games. I mean, I'm not such a Clemson fanatic that I want nobody in the stands in Clemson to win by 100. Now, I know you will tell me you'll take packed crowds and win by 100.
Absolutely. I will tell you that every time. Path of least resistance is what I'm going for to the national championship game, to the playoffs, to whatever we're going to. I mean, look, the only thing that bothers me about these guys not having good teams right now is the fact that if we lose a game, we're out because of our schedule for the most part. I mean, it was bad a few years ago. We lose a game, we still kind of sneak in, but now, it's just tough. We're getting so hammered for our schedule, and the ACC is getting completely obliterated, by all the talking heads on the networks and everything, that one loss could do us in. And if that's the case, that's going to be a problem. That's going to really irritate me if you lose one game and you're out of the playoffs because of it. But with the exception of that, as long as we're making it to where we need to go and getting that ultimate prize at the end, playing for the national championship, I couldn't care less about it than the other teams.
And Trey gets in and is talking about Clemson, specifically a Joe. Will he redshirt? He says he doubts EJ Williams will. Well, the right. Wide receiver core for Clemson. We'll talk about Clemson now for a second, but who wants to talk about Clemson? I mean, really?
Yeah.
The wide receiver core for Clemson is they only have 8 scholarship players, I believe, because they had 12, they lost 4, they might have 10, or they had 10 and lost 4 and then added 2, something like that. So they only have, I believe, 8 scholarship players, and EJ and Ajo were the 2 guys that they added this season. Ajo is definitely somebody who's a raw talent from Canada, but then played in Florida last year. He is, I believe, 6'4", so he's a big, tall guy.
Yep.
When you look at him at practice, he's definitely got the body and the build. EJ Williams definitely has the body and the build to be a starter. And he and Justin Ross have been friends for a long time. So, been studying, I'm sure, and been working together for quite some time. So I agree with you on EJ. As far as Joe, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that he redshirts just because they don't have a ton of wide receivers.
Yeah, I actually think he is going to redshirt. I think he's got too much to learn. Like you said, he's a raw prospect coming from Canada, that kind of thing. He's just got to learn his craft. He's got to learn how to, properly run routes and get off blocks and that kind of thing. I think he's definitely going to be. I think he's going to be that guy, or definitely block. Excuse me, not get off blocks. But I think he's going to have to redshirt this year, even though Clemson doesn't have a ton of people there. They still got Rogers, they have Ross, and they still have Ngata. They have Ladson. They have Brandon Spector, and then you're going to have EJ Williams, who I think is going to play this year. They've got options there. I think they've got a good two deep for sure without having to use him. Now, he'll play. I think he'll play the 4 games and kind of move on about his business while he's kind of learning his craft, so to speak. But I believe he's headed for a redshirt year.
Now, that's one thing that Clemson does really well is they play, and they do have 9. So they've got Cornell Powell, Amari Rogers, Justin Ross, Will Brown, who,
Powell, I miss Powell. Yeah, I forgot about him.
Joe Ngata, Frank Ladson, Brandon Spector. Which I never think about Brandon Spector, but he's definitely somebody who can get some reps in. EJ Williams, a Joe.
Will Sweeney.
So is he gone? Is Will Sweeney gone?
I don't even know anymore.
I believe he is, man. I mean, he's not on this list, but as we said before, who knows about these lists really? These websites don't keep up stuff anyways. But yeah, I could see that. I mean, they have 9. I thought they had 8, but they have 9, including Will Brown. So take Will Brown out, they have 8 scholarship players. If you're only going to do 3, then you have a 2 deep 3, so that gives you 6 plus 2. So, I could see that now if you really think about it, because of the sense of this. They're really talking about pushing these tight ends more this year.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Galloway is going to have a full year. Allen looks great. Lay is a huge dude. We'll see what he can do. Sage Ennis, when I saw him at practice, looked amazing. Don't sleep on Luke Price. These dudes, they look like a bunch of hockey players out there. They're just so big and bad and strong. And JC Chalk as well. But I would say that in the sense of pass catching ability, you got to expect Davis Allen and Braden Galloway to get out there and dominate as far as pass catching tight ends go, because I think they're great. I think they're ready to show up next year. If you throw them in the mix as far as pass catchers, in that sense, a Joe is going to get his 4 games and be done. But that's what's good about Clemson, like I was saying before, is that Dabo Swinney's definitely going to get you your 4 games. I don't know many times that he doesn't let you at least play your 4 games.
Yeah, definitely right. And I agree with you on the tight end as well. And we got our man Dean Cox in here and says the Sweeney is a senior this year, so we do have Will back with us. He'll see the field a little bit and mop up duty as well.
But I will tell you, and Dean can confirm this. He says that what's the third son of Clay?
That sounds right. Drew,
Dabo,
Clay, and Will, yeah.
Dabo has said that his youngest son is the best of them all. So,
all right. I mean,
we'll see, because Will's pretty good. So we'll see what happens. But segment 3, Al, tell us about our final segment sponsor before we get into it.
We'll do it. Our segment 3 sponsors, Heating Cooling Services, Inc. They are family owned and operated, serving Anderson County and surrounding areas since 1980. Heating Cooling Services, Inc. is your residential and commercial comfort expert. Anything from preventative maintenance of your home HVAC system to overhauling a commercial chiller or anything in between. If you want to breathe easier and be nice and cool in your home or business this summer, give Mark or Jason Trammell a call at Heating Cooling Services, Inc. Their number is 864-224-7655. Again, I want to tell you that phone number is 864-224-7655, and you're going to want to ask for Mark or Jason Trammell and tell them that Big Al and Morgan Thomas sent you from the Morgan Thomas Show. They're good people, and they'll take good care of you.
They're good people. You sound like a president, right? They're good people. Good people.
They're good people.
Well, we got about 13 over here watching on YouTube and enjoying us. Hey, we got open phone lines at Charleston Sports Pub Hotline, 864-772-6674. Nobody's got in so far. If you get in, we do take your call. Unless we're in the middle of a segment, we will get you at the end of the segment. So get in and call, and if you want to talk about something, we will bring you on live. So, Al, what you got over on Facebook? Anything before we get into The next,
No new question. No, we got about 14 hanging in here with us over here. And, of course, we got some, Clemson heavy hitters like Bill Lanham and Dean Cox over here with us. So we need to get some good content cranking out here for this next segment.
oh yeah, and got Rusty here. Rusty is jumped in. He's watching us over on YouTube, and this is Rusty. So Rusty, I saw him at Lowe's. This is
Okay.
this is the fan I told you I saw at Lowe's. I'm
Oh, yeah.
standing in line. I'm standing in line. I don't get very many fans. I don't know. Have you gotten any fans that ever like gave you a shout out?
No shout out fans yet. Not yet. Anyways, I did have one. I did have one, but it was from Travis Sanders at a local fair, so that doesn't really count because he already knows me.
Well, I'm sure Mary Beth gives you a shout every time you wake up. That
Yeah.
she's your number one fan for sure. But Rusty gets in and he kind of saw me at Lowe's. Now, I don't want anybody to beat me up. I did go to Lowe's, and I did get non-essential goods. So don't beat me up over that. But this was last week. So, it is what it is now. Kind of stuck without that. Can't even take care of my yard anymore, Al.
Yeah, it's really a shame. This stuff is nuts. I'm actually taking good care of my yard right now, which is kind of crazy. I don't want my wife to get used to it though, so we got to be careful.
I've got the weed den, and you've got the swamp.
That's right.
So,
Exactly.
all right. So segment number 3, the bottom of the barrel for the ACC. We've got Syracuse Orange and NC State Wolfpack. Syracuse 2-6 in the ACC, 5-7 overall. NC State 1-7 in the ACC, 4-8 overall. Both teams. It looks like NC State was the only team in the ACC Atlantic to lose every away game, so they were 0-5. Syracuse was 2-4. Neither team beat a ranked team, of course, and NC State lost 6 games in a row to finish the season. That feels good, doesn't it, Dave? No amount of computer hardware can help you from losing 6 games in a row. But let's start off with Syracuse because, Al, we started this show last year, and we had on Kevin Wall, who was a Syracuse expert. He was a writer for one of the Syracuse websites. And he was actually he knew that they more than likely wouldn't beat Clemson, but he was actually he had high expectations for the team. Tommy DeVito was this guy that we were told is going to become the better than Dungy, or he's going to fit better in the scheme than Dungy. I've got some stats about that I'm going to hold, but there's some problems happening up in New York right now, other than the virus. There's some problems happening in upstate New York, and that is that they had high expectations and low results. Here's something I thought was funny. 2 defensive coordinators already this spring. They had one, Zach Arnett, who was hired from San Diego State. He was hired because Dino Babers wants to go to a 3-3-5 defense primarily. Who knows if he's kind of cheating off of Brent Venables' sheet there. Even though Brent Venables, it was kind of a necessity and not really a want to, I believe, to go to the 3-3-5. Right. And I believe that Clemson's going to go back to the 4-3, which we've talked about in the past. But he picked up Zach Arnett. Well, Mike Leach goes to Mississippi State. Zach Arnett's like, see you later. I'm going down south to the SEC, which is a problem for ACC, losing coaches to the other conference. But now he's joined Mike Leach, and so they had to hire Tony White, who is another guy who is familiar with the 3-3-5 defense. So they're hoping for that. They moved Sterling Gilbert into the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach. He, in the past, has worked with Dino Babers, so they're kind of friends from previous coaching jobs. But the biggest question is Dino Babers on the hot seat this year?
I think you would have to be, really. I mean, look, they had some success with it in the Dungy years, and to drop off the face of the earth like they have, with DeVito at the helm, I think he's definitely going to be on the hot seat. And Dino Babers is thought about as a great coach, for the most part. So this is kind of interesting for him to be where he is. But they're going to have to improve on that offensive line, man. DeVito was getting hammered all year last year. But his stats were okay. 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, and that's not too bad. It's just, can the offensive line improve? I'm just not sure. Their main wide receiver, Tristan Jackson's left for the NFL. Who's going to be their playmakers on offense? They have capable running backs. They have Jarvion Howard and Abdul Adams are the guys that are going to kind of come back and replace Mo Neal, who I believe left after this year. So, they'll have a solid running back stable for sure, which should help DeVito out a little bit. Taj Harris, I believe, is their returning wide receiver. I think the fact that, on defense, they were not good last year. They gave up a ton of big plays. The 3-3-5 should help with that. You have that extra defensive back on the field. Makes you a little bit quicker, should be less susceptible to those big plays. So that should help for sure. And, we mentioned this earlier. They kick off at BC Friday night to begin the season. There are other out-of-conference games I have: Rutgers, Colgate, Western Michigan, and Liberty. So nothing too substantial there. So the schedule kind of sets up pretty nicely for them as far as out-of-conference is concerned anyways. But, just the fact that I don't believe in anything I've seen yet. Tommy DeVito is going to have to show me a little bit of something. And their offensive line is going to have to get a heck of a lot better before I start believing in Syracuse.
I was looking at this. So it was 2018, Dungy played. That's Eric Dungy as a quarterback. They went, what did they win? They won 9. They won 10 games and lost 3 games that season. They won their bowl game against number 16 West Virginia, 34-18. All right, so that was the Dungy year, and that was the thing that got everybody talking about Babers, how awesome he was. Before that, he was kind of average for the Syracuse Orange. And I'll tell you this. Let me pull up my stat here real quick. So, interesting note. Without Eric Dungy, okay, so he won 10 games with Eric Dungy. Without Eric Dungy, he's 13-23. That is a big tell sign there for me, because if you're a good coach, you should be a good coach regardless, but you should also make sure that you keep your quarterback succession in line like Dabo Swinney has been doing. Now, that's one thing I'll tell you. When Deshaun Watson won, I thought, can Dabo continue it? People are going to start questioning him. If he falls off the planet, it's going to be like, well, it was all Deshaun, And that was one thing I worried when Deshaun won it, because I was like, Deshaun's gone now. Is Dabo Swinney going to be able to keep it going? Well, obviously he was able to keep it going. But I think this falls in line with Dino Babers for sure, because I think if you're a Syracuse fan, why aren't you saying, well, Dungy was really the reason? Yeah. Kind of like we talk about Gabe DeBow. I don't mean to bring up basketball, but Gabe DeBow might have really been the reason. But Eric Dungy definitely was a great player, a playmaker type guy, a Johnny Manziel, a Tim Tebow type, just a winner. He's a gamer. He's a Steven Garcia, just a
not Steven Garcia,
Connor Shaw type guy. Just can kill it. Steven Garcia could kill it in other ways off the field, but
he did have that Bama win. I mean, he's got that going for him. They'll talk about that for the next 30 years, no doubt.
You talked about sacks. All right, so I'm looking up their stats, and it's funny you bring up sacks because I looked at 50 sacks allowed last year, and I was like, no, this isn't right. This is fake. This is fake news. This is a typo this is a typo on ESPN, because typos happen on ESPN, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
There have been plenty of mistakes I have repeated on this show, and you have been like, that didn't happen, Morgan. And I'm like, it happened on ESPN's box score. And you're like, no, it didn't. I mean, I'm like, yes, it did, but it was on paper on the website. But 50 sacks allowed. Now, I checked that with multiple sources. So, yes, they allowed 50 sacks, worst in the ACC, worse than Florida State, who we just got done talking about having a terrible offensive line. So, but another problem that DeVito has is not only that he doesn't have a good offensive line, but Mo Neal, like you said, remember what we talked about when we were picking against the spread? If the team they're facing can stop Mo Neal, is good against the run, game over for Syracuse.
Yeah.
Game over. Because that's all they ended up using later towards the season. At the end of the year, it was Mo Neal and nobody else. Now, Tristan Jackson did have a good game, second all-ACC guy. He had a good game against Clemson. But, again, it was really more Mo Neal show, and that was it because DeVito, was running for his life most of the time. Now, when I talk about DeVito running for his life, I have to mention the great Isaiah Simmons destroying him like in a torpedo-type spear from the backfield. If you haven't seen that, go check it out on YouTube or Twitter because he just absolutely kills DeVito in that, which is great for a Clemson fan for sure. But again, this is another team that we were talking about away games, Al. 4 before November and 2 in November. So they have 6 away games this year, but they do get Rutgers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that I'm going to give them that one. They do get Colgate, who, if it was a basketball game, might, or maybe a baseball game, might give them some run there, but I think they'll be okay. Liberty, who they beat last year, it wasn't a pretty game, but they beat them. So Fighting Hugh Freeze there. I'm going with 3 wins for them. It was hard for me to find a 4th win, to be honest with you. All these away games they got in there. Got to play Clemson. Got to play a Boston College team that I think is going to be a little bit better on defense than they were. They got to play a Louisville team that I think is also going to be better. They got to play an NC State team that we're going to talk about more, but I think they're going to be better too. So Syracuse is in the bottom of the barrel for me. I have Syracuse last in the Atlantic Division this year. I'm going to go ahead and give you a spoiler for that.
Yeah, don't jump the gun. Let's get into NC State here in the Fighting Dave Dorans, okay? There's no love lost here between Clemson fans and Dave Doran after Laptop Gate and all that kind of crap that was going on. So that was kind of fun to see them go 4-8 last year. Look, we're talking about hot seat. You may hear an NC State guy here soon when we're talking about what coaches on the hot seat because I think Doran is. Look, you can say that about a lot of the coaches in the ACC, but I think this is one of the main ones for sure. They went 9-4 in the 2 previous seasons and went 4-8. That's a huge drop off. It's kind of like you mentioned with the Dungy thing, is Finley leaves and they drop off the face of the earth. Okay. And by the way, if just in case Dabo was listening under quarantine, I had no doubts that after Deshaun Watson that we were going to continue the dominance because of your plan.
Oh,
okay?
here we go.
I trust in Dabo.
Here we go.
So Morgan is the doubter, not me. But back to NC State, they have Devin Leary. He's the incumbent starter as they announced. Can he maintain that position? I don't know. He went 101 for 110 last year with 1,200 yards, 8 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Okay, those are not eye-popping stats or anything like that. They do return Zonovan Knight, who I think is a good running back. I think
we talked a lot about him last year.
Zonovan Knight is a really good running back. We did. Yeah, absolutely. Ricky Person, as a matter of fact, is a former Clemson target. Ricky Person is a guy that I thought was going to end up playing at Clemson at one point. I think we actually moved on and took a commitment from somebody else. I like somebody a little bit better. But Ricky Person's a solid running back too. He had injury problems last year, I believe. So he did have a promising freshman year. I think the running back punch is going to be good for them, which is going to be a huge help to their quarterback. So if Dorn doesn't win, is he gone, man? I think he's going to need like a 6-6 year with a bowl win to stay. I think anything less than that, and he's going to be out of there. But I looked at their out-of-conference games. They're playing Mississippi State, Troy, Delaware, and Liberty. So not a really big-time slate there. Mississippi State is not what they were a couple of years ago. So I don't – and they weren't great then, but they were a pretty solid team. So not a terrible out-of-conference schedule there, but I'm not expecting a ton from NC State this year either.
I mean, I am actually expecting a little bit of a turnaround for NC State. I mean, they're bottom of the barrel already from last year, 1-7 in the ACC, 4-8 overall, 0-5 on the road, lost the last 6 games. We kind of already talked about this. Syracuse was the only ACC win for the Wolfpack. I think they will be able to get it again going into the year. Devin Leary is returning, more experienced. We talked about Zonovan Knight. We liked him. He played great against Clemson. I mean, for like being the only player to actually do something against Clemson. I believe either I named him as player of the game for the opposite team, or I gave him a helmet sticker from the opposite team. But Zonovan Knight, you got to give him some props there. They also return Emeka Emenzi, Devin Carter, Kerry Angeline, who is a great tight end for them. So they do lose one of their best defensive linemen from last year, probably their best defensive lineman, Laurel Murchison. So he's gone, but they're hoping to get 3 guys back from the secondary who had season-ending injuries, I believe, towards the middle of the season, which, is a big problem to have. You get 3 guys that were starters in your secondary down. Normally, you only have about 4 guys on the field anyway, so that's just about your entire secondary right there gone. But, I would say they don't lose as much as Syracuse. They do have to revamp their coaching staff. But the players are still there, really, in my opinion. So Tim Beck is the new offensive coordinator. He comes from Texas. So you got to think there's going to be a little bit more firepower there. Maybe some more running quarterback type stuff, some more Ellinger type stuff, if Leary can do that.
Right.
Tony Gibson takes over his full-time ownership of defensive coordinator. He was already on staff. He just got promoted. They've got new coaches at safeties, cornerbacks, defensive line, and nickelback.
Yeah.
So 4 new coaches there. Really, we will know very quickly, because out of the gate, which is a terrible out of the gate for them, considering how horrible they were last year. They got Louisville to start the season off, which I believe is a Thursday night game, and then they've got Mississippi State. Who's the Mike Leach type guy who's just gonna try to go all over on them. So that's a tough first 2 games out the gate for sure. They do only have an average of 3. I mean, they have their what I would say the average, which is 3 away games before November, and then close out the season, I believe, with 2 away games in November. So the schedule is not really that bad as far as traveling to a bunch of away games, but I really do. I feel like, considering the fact they got a returning quarterback, considering the fact they've got Knight, who is a good running back, and a good tight end there, consistent targets for the quarterback, and they're trying to revamp their defense this year. I'm going to give them a better outlook than they had last year. I don't think they finish up last. So let's get into it. The rankings for the 2020 season. Let's say the 2020 season finishes. We know the previous rankings were Clemson, Louisville, Wake Forest, Florida State, Boston College, Syracuse, and NC State. What is your rankings going or finishing out next year? Just a prediction. Crystal ball here.
Obviously, number 1, I have Clemson. I mean, I think that's as obvious as it gets. Okay. Number 2, I have Louisville. We talked up Louisville a good bit, talked about how they can make some noise. So I have them at number 2. This is where things got tricky, obviously, after the first 2, right? Okay. I really wanted to have Wake Forest 3rd. In fact, I did have Wake Forest 3rd, and I moved them for one specific reason. I have FSU at 3 now. I have Wake Forest at 4. The only reason I have them below is because a lot of their toss-up games, those Wake Forest games that they're going to need to have there to get, jockey for position, are on the road. A lot of their toss-up games are on the road, so I moved FSU a spot above them, even though I think Wake Forest is a little bit better team than FSU. So I have Clemson 1, Louisville 2, FSU 3, Wake Forest 4. I have NC State at 5, Boston College at 6, and Syracuse bringing up the rear at 7.
Pretty close. So I have you're almost right. I have Clemson, and again, this is our prediction for what we think the ACC Atlantic will fall out. Where the cookie will crumble, where the pickle will squirt, if you will.
I'm
Clemson,
out.
Clemson, number 1, Louisville, Florida State. I did have Florida State 3rd. I feel like Norvell is a quick turnaround type guy. I think he can take advantage this season. I think he can go into the Clemson game undefeated and carry on that momentum. I don't think he'll beat Clemson, but I think that he can build up some momentum quick. Then I have NC State because of all their returning, and I have Wake Forest after that, Boston College, and Syracuse at the end. So BC, Syracuse, both teams that we think are going to be at the bottom. Clemson, Louisville, both teams we think are going to be at the top. Florida State, NC State, Wake Forest in the middle. They could shake out any way possible. It'll be amazing to see what we come up with when the Coastal Division review goes through, because if you thought the Atlantic Division was a headache, the Coastal Division is definitely going to be a headache for us. But we are that much more smarter, more smart, more intelligent than we were a few days ago.
Yeah.
You were already very intelligent. I'm working on it, but I am playing a lot of Sudoku. So,
Well, are you like completing any of them?
why you got to ask stuff like that? You know,
Sorry.
can you just
My
let me?
apologies.
Can you just let me say stuff
Shouldn't have asked
and leave it? All right. So top players not wearing orange. We kind of went over a
Really?
bunch of these. I basically went over a bunch of these, except for the offensive line because it was just kind of. To be honest with you, Al, I just picked some. Really, I just did. I just did.
That's fair.
All right. So start with quarterback. Who you got?
Yep.
Best Atlantic player not wearing orange. Well, I say not wearing orange, but we have orange in
Not
the
wearing
Syracuse
Clemson
orange.
orange.
So not wearing Clemson uniform. What do you got for quarterback?
I have Mikael Cunningham from Louisville.
Yeah, I have the
Yeah,
same
I
one.
don't think there's really any debate there.
Yeah, I mean, who else is up there? I mean, you could say Leary if he has
Sam,
a good season.
maybe. I would say Hartman would be up there possibly, but
Hartman, yeah.
going by last year, it's Mikael Cunningham.
Yeah, going by last year for sure. Hartman and maybe Leary would be up there. Maybe Blackman if he turns some things around. I know people were talking about that transfer from Notre Dame, though, that might take over for sure.
Right.
Running back, I got a guy you mentioned. I think you're going to mention this too. Javian Hawkins, who's second team All ACC, 117 yards per game, better than Travis Etienne.
I actually went with Zonovan Knight here from NC State because I like his potential there. I think he was underutilized. I think they're going to really give him the ball a lot this year.
I was just really thinking you were going with Hawkins there. Nice to see you go with Knight there. For wide receiver, I would be interested to see who you're. If you don't pick this guy, you got to pick the other guy. I think in my mind, but Sage Surratt, Wake Forest, first team All ACC, number one in average yards per game at 111 yards per game, better than Clemson's best, which was 8th in the ACC. So number one wide receiver returning at Wake Forest.
I went with the same thing actually. So I mean, he's big play guy, so he's going to make a lot more plays this year.
And, my second pick would have been like Tutu Atwell. You mentioned him earlier, too. He's another good guy for sure.
Yep.
Tight end. This is a guy we really didn't talk about at all, but he plays for BC. He was the third team All ACC, and he's returning Hunter Long for BC. 39.2 yards per game average. And for receiving, he was in the top 25, I believe, as far as yards per game.
Yeah, ditto. I actually had the same one. Man, you're doing pretty good at this so far.
I can read numbers. Now, if you put them together,
add them. Just read them.
Yeah, if you put them together and with symbols in between them and an equal sign, I get kind of confused when you start doing that. But offensive line, I straight up guessed. I just used the All ACC rankings there. But Ben Petrulia or Zion Johnson from Boston College. Petrulia. I don't know if I said that right, but both were second team All ACC guys, and they're Boston College guys, so I got to give it to them.
Yeah, exactly. I did the exact same thing. I went Ben Petrula as well because they're Boston College, big beefy boy from Boston College. I mean, he's got to be. And I went, second team All ACC, I think, like you said. So yeah, I went with him as well.
And this is another guy for Wake Forest. So this is my second Wake Forest guy for defensive line, which we kind of lumped offensive line and defensive line together because we knew this was going to be a longer show, so we wanted to kind of keep it moving. But Carlos Basham Jr., first team All ACC, 11 sacks in 2019 from Wake Forest.
Yeah, I went with Carlos Basham as well. I debated between him and Marvin Wilson from FSU. Again, Wilson put up some pretty good numbers at defensive tackle, not in. So I'm pretty impressed with him. But yeah, I went with Basham as well.
And really the only player from Syracuse that got in the All ACC, I believe, other than like a special teams player. For linebacker, I've got Lakeem Williams, third team All ACC, 110 tackles total ending out the year. I believe he was like in the top 5 of the ACC in total tackles for a linebacker.
Yeah, I went with Max Richardson from BC. I talked about him earlier in the day. Like his stats, like the fact that he returns for the Eagles, kind of be one of those guys to kind of cement the middle of the defense for him. So I went with Mr. Richardson.
So you said you kind of went out there. Who'd you say?
Max Richardson from BC.
All right, and then to close it out, we just did kind of secondary. I just went ahead and picked cornerback. A team that definitely has some pretty good cornerbacks is the Florida State team. Asante Samuel Jr. looks like he's returning, or he's at least a junior, I believe, and he's third team All ACC and got a lot of hype behind him. Obviously, his dad was really good too. So,
yeah, not too shabby there. I actually went with Andre Cisco from Syracuse. He's a DB with him. I mean, hard hitter, real, ball hawk kind of guy, likes to be real physical out there. So I think he's going to do some good things this year.
Yeah, I like that. It's interesting to say there are some Syracuse dudes out there. It's just not on offense right now, but
right.
So we got a good coverage there. We got some LSU, LU guys, some Louisville guys, some Wake Forest guys, some Boston College guys in there. Did we skip any teams? Did we miss anybody? I talked about a Florida State guy, Wake Forest. Yeah. We didn't say an NC State player, did we?
Zonovan Knight. I had him
You
at running
said
back.
NC State.
Did we have did you pick anybody from Florida State?
Did I picked Asante Samuel.
Oh, that's okay. So I think we covered everybody.
So that's good. That's good that we covered everybody because I didn't cover NC State and you did. So that's a good job there. So that's basically it. I don't have anything. That's the end of the line. Al, I know we were going to talk. We were talking about this earlier on this year about how at the end of the show, I would ask you what's coming up. What is on the plate for Clemson Athletics? Well, there's nothing on the plate for Clemson Athletics.
There is nothing on the plate. It's even more depressing now that you ask me live on air. I've really been missing the baseball, especially. It's brutal. I'm a baseball guy and I miss it so much. It's in the tournament, goodness gracious, I tell everybody that'll listen to me, we're talking about sporting events. The NCAA tournament, I think, is the greatest sporting event ever. And we're, none of that this year. So this is just rough, but there's nothing on the docket. All we can do now is keep your distance from everybody else. Quit going to Lowe's for non-essential things and things of that sort. And maybe we can get some football this fall. Why are you giving me that face? You're the guy. Don't do the blinking man gif. You are the guy.
Weed killing is essential. I'm just scrolling through Reddit.
Yeah.
And there's a rumor out there that Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit are going to go to Monday Night Football away from college football. I don't know. I don't see that happening. And then there's also a lot of uproar. The Masters is being moved to November 12th to 15th. Now, it doesn't hurt Clemson in the sense that that's the same weekend that they play the Citadel. So not too bad. This military appreciation weekend, I believe. But for other teams, let's see what other teams this conflicts with. You got Tennessee at Georgia, Ole Miss, Arkansas, LSU, or South Carolina at LSU. Let's see if there's anybody else. Missouri at Florida, Ohio State, Maryland, Michigan State, Penn State. So, it's earlier on in November, but a lot of people are saying, man, a fall Masters, that's just not even right.
I don't have a problem with the Masters being in the fall because I wonder how many fans we can lose here. I couldn't care less about the Masters anyways. So it doesn't really matter to me. I watch the Masters, at least the end of it. I like to, if there's a good match going on, I do like to watch. I like to see the ending, and it's beautiful scenery just to look at. But I really just don't care.
Looks like Mickey Plowler just signed off of
yeah. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for watching and listening wherever you're checking us out, whether it be Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, the Roar's website, wccpfm.com, or anywhere you listen to our podcast. Go check out our podcast and give us a listen over there as well, and give us a subscription on YouTube and follow us over on Facebook. We almost have 2,100 followers on Facebook, and we're getting so much closer to 1,000 followers or subscribers on YouTube. So if you're watching and you haven't already done so, please do so. But that's it for this week. We will take a week off and come back and give you our preview of the Coastal Division in 2 weeks. But that's it. I'm Morgan Thomas.
And I'm Alan Adams.
And as always, Tiger fans, we'll see you at the top of the hill.